Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zoe Nelson. Zoe Nelson was born on August 13, 1992 in Wishaw, Scotland. At the age of 18, she lived with her mother, stepfather, and two younger sisters, including 16-year-old Laura Ann, in New Mains, a village on the eastern edge of Wishaw, about 18 miles southeast of Glasgow. Zoe attended Motherwell College, where she was a popular student with many friends. A complicated romantic situation developed when both Zoe and her sister Laura Ann became involved with the same 20-year-old man, Robert Bain, who lived with his grandparents about a mile from the Nelson family home. Tensions between the sisters increased, leading to conflicts. On May 22, 2010, Zoe met Robert outside her home, which upset Laura Ann. When Laura Ann saw this, she rushed out of the house to confront Zoe. Their 40-year-old mother, Marianne Nelson, witnessed the fight between her daughters. According to Marianne, Laura Ann tried to provoke Zoe by flicking her hair and attempted to slap her face, leading to a physical altercation at the end of the driveway. Marianne intervened, breaking up the fight and telling the sisters to leave and not come back. Zoe complied with her mother's order and never returned home. At around 11 p.m. that same day, some locals spotted someone setting a fire in the wooded area known as Monkey Hill. The smell of smoke drifted to nearby homes, but at the time, no one paid much attention. Zoe's aunt, 35-year-old Shirley Nelson, later remembered that night, describing how she was sitting in her garden in New Mains after finishing her second shift at work. She and her sister sat in the back of the house until about 11 p.m. when it got cooler and they smelled smoke. However, they didn't think anything of it because of the warm weather. The next day, Zoe's family tried to contact her, but no one answered. On the afternoon of May 23rd, Stuart Bell, a 45-year-old government employee from Wishaw, rode his motorcycle into a nearby wooded area and saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a charred tailor's dummy, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a human body that had been badly damaged in a fire. He immediately went home to call the police, who arrived 15 to 20 minutes later. When the police arrived, they sealed off the area, as nothing so horrific had ever occurred there before. News of the body's discovery quickly spread, and when Zoe's family learned of it, her mother, Marianne Nelson, went to the police to report her daughter's disappearance, which had happened after they had fought, and Marianne told Zoe not to come home. The police soon broke the devastating news to the Nelson family. Zoe had fallen victim to a crime. Marianne issued a statement through the police, describing Zoe as a typical popular 17-year-old with a strong presence in the local community and many friends. In just a couple of months, she would have turned 18. Her family is deeply distraught over her loss. Zoe's stepfather, Daniel, and her sisters, Laura Ann and Ashley, are heartbroken about what happened, and the family is urging anyone with information to come forward and assist the police in their investigation. Hugh Logan, the principal of Motherwell College, where Zoe studied vehicle body repair, expressed shock on behalf of the college community upon learning the dreadful news of her death. He described Zoe as a very popular student and conveyed that the college's thoughts are with her family and friends. A thorough investigation of the scene spanned several days, with a team of at least 50 police officers working on the case. Detective Derek Robertson, part of the main investigation team, lamented the loss of Zoe's young life and vowed that his officers would not rest until the perpetrator was caught. He urged anyone who saw Zoe between 5 p.m. and 11:20 p.m. on Saturday night to come forward and assist the investigation. Robertson noted that, given the area's popularity on the hottest day of the year, numerous people would have been taking shortcuts and sunbathing, and that the police were particularly interested in speaking with those who may have used the dirt trails, including one that crossed near the location where Zoe's body was found. Zoe was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a heavy build and collar-length brown hair. At the time she went missing, She was wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a white long-sleeved top, and black Nike trainers. The detectives have been reviewing CCTV footage, phone records, and computer data, as well as conducting door-to-door inquiries and speaking to Zoe's friends and family to try to recreate her last movements on May 26th. The police released video footage from a local shop where Zoe was seen just hours before she died. These small details were crucial to the investigation, as they helped the police trace Zoe's movements and ultimately led to the arrest of the person responsible for her death. After examining the crime scene, investigators found a red plastic sombrero-shaped cap from a Sierra Silver tequila bottle near the body and an empty bottle of the same brand on the other side of a small walkway nearby. Due to the body being exposed to fire for approximately 7 hours, forensic experts faced limitations in determining the exact cause of death. The body was discovered with a partially melted plastic bag covering most of the face, leading pathologists to conclude that asphyxiation was the most likely cause of death. Despite the damage, the palm of the right hand remained relatively intact, allowing 2 DNA samples to be collected, one matching Zoe Nelson herself, and the other belonging to an unidentified male. Ultimately, the official cause of death was recorded as undetermined. By May 28th, police had gathered several witness statements that provided a disturbing account of Zoe's last days. One witness reported seeing Zoe with a heavily intoxicated and aggressive man at around 5:15 p.m. on May 22nd, who was hitting her on the head. Another witness claimed to have seen Zoe walking with a man with a tattooed face near his home in New Mains. A third witness described seeing Zoe with a similar-looking man in New Mains, who appeared angry, hit a lamppost, and threatened to take someone's life that night. Multiple witnesses came forward, all describing the same young man, 20-year-old Robert Bain. Notably, Robert Bain had a prior criminal record despite his youth. He had served 18 months in prison for robbery and was released just 7 weeks before Zoe's death. Additionally, he had been arrested 4 times for possessing illegal substances, though as a juvenile, he faced minimal consequences. Investigators started to view Robert Bain as a prime suspect in the case. Before they could take further action, Bain surprisingly turned up at the police station in Wishaw around 5:50 p.m. on May 28th. He was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words, and wanted to make a statement. Bain claimed that a few days prior, he had been in Motherwell, where he got on a bus to return home. During the journey, he said, a man named Stuart Campbell boarded the same bus. Bain alleged that he approached Campbell and asked if he had been with Zoe on the previous Saturday night. According to Bain, Campbell's response was incriminating. Yes, I took her life. This was the first mention of Stuart Campbell's name during the entire investigation, whereas Robert Bain's name had come up repeatedly. As a result, the police arrested Bain on the same day. A strong justification for Robert Bain's arrest would emerge during his trial. At the time of his arrest, Bain claimed to have last seen Zoe on the morning in May. However, forensic tests revealed incriminating evidence against him. A DNA sample from Zoe Nelson's hand revealed not only her own DNA, but also traces of another person's DNA, which matched part of Bain's DNA profile. Additionally, DNA evidence found on a tequila bottle and its cap, discovered near Zoe's body, matched both Zoe Nelson and Robert Bain. According to the forensic expert, this suggested that both individuals had consumed from the bottle and then replaced the cap. Expert Marie Campbell stated that the scientific findings indicated that Robert Bain's DNA was deposited between Zoe Nelson's fingers and on her right palm. The chances of the DNA found on the red plastic sombrero lid belonging to anyone other than Robert Bain were an astonishing 10 million to 1. Robert Bain was accused of being involved in Zoe Nelson's death due to multiple eyewitness accounts and DNA evidence. Despite this, he pleaded not guilty and acted defiantly, even confronting one of the investigators. He also denied an earlier alleged assault on Zoe, where a witness claimed he struck her on the head with his fist. Hundreds attended Zoe Nelson's funeral at Coltness Memorial Church on June 16, 2010. She was laid to rest at Campus Nathan Cemetery. Over 200 mourners, including her mother, sisters, and grandmother, gathered to pay their respects. Reverend Graham Rayburn led the service, noting the large turnout as a testament to Zoe's significant impact. He described her as a happy, cheerful teenager with a big heart who loved fast cars and rangers. Sadly, she never met her newborn nephew or got to contact her biological father. On March 1, 2011, Robert Bain's trial began, during which he maintained his innocence. Testifying in court, Zoe Nelson's teenage friends recalled a conversation they had with her a week before her death, in which she attributed her scratches and bruises to a fight with Robert Bain. According to her friends, Zoe described Bain as bossy, unstable, and prone to anger over minor issues. He also controlled her social circle, dictating which friends she could see. Although Zoe and Bain's relationship was relatively short-lived, given he had only been out of prison for 2 months, he exerted significant influence over her and also pursued a relationship with her 16-year-old sister, Laura Ann. Notably, Laura Ann was aware of her sister's death 5 days before the body was discovered by a passerby, but kept this secret until the trial, where it was revealed that Bain had taken Laura Ann to the location of Zoe's body. Laura Ann, who testified from behind a screen to avoid seeing Bain, recounted that on May 23rd, the day after her argument with Zoe, she visited Bain's address to return some clothes. Upon arrival, she observed that Robert seemed nervous and had been consuming vodka. They soon left the house, with Bain claiming he wanted to show her something. According to Laura Ann, he led her to the location where Zoe's body lay. Recognizing the ranger's tattoo on her arm, Laura Ann identified the body as her sister. During court questioning, Laura Ann stated that Bain had confessed to hitting Zoe, and when Zoe attempted to retaliate, he lost control and took her life. Bain then allegedly used gasoline in an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the crime. Laura Ann confessed to walking with Bain on the day following the discovery of the body. Afterwards, she visited his home, spending time in his bedroom, where they listened to music together. She also had a phone conversation with him that lasted around an hour. A friend of Laura Ann, who testified in court, recalled that Laura Ann seemed happy and normal, despite knowing her sister was dead. When questioned about why she didn't reveal everything to the police during her initial interrogation, Laura Ann explained that she was afraid that if she told them, her mother wouldn't believe her and would think she was responsible for Zoe's death. The jury heard testimony from Laura Ann Nelson, who stated that Robert Bain had threatened her, saying she would face the same consequences as Zoe if she told anyone about his actions. On March 25, 2011, a jury of 7 men and 7 women delivered a unanimous guilty verdict. As the verdict was read, Bain became violent, requiring physical restraint. Handcuffed, he jumped up in the dock, struggling with security officers and police, and headbutting one of them. He also shouted insults and threats at Zoe Nelson's family, forcing the courtroom to be cleared while order was restored. After a 20-minute adjournment, Judge Lady Dorian agreed to proceed with the trial in Bain's absence. In a separate matter, Robert Bain was acquitted of stealing alcohol from an Asda store in New Mains on May 22nd, as well as disorderly conduct related to yelling, cursing, and waving a knife in various streets in Wishaw on the same day. Bain was also acquitted of stealing Zoe's cell phone, which was found in the woods, and of threatening a police officer during an interview at the Motherwell police station on May 28th. On April 27, 2011, Robert Bain was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years for taking the life of Zoe Nelson. He received another 6 years for the obstruction of justice charge, and both sentences were to be served concurrently. The judge, Lady Dorian, described the crime as appalling and shocking. On Christmas Eve 2022, 29-year-old Laura Ann Nelson was found dead in her apartment after not being heard from for days. She was left with 2 children, ages 3 and 4. Her death was not considered criminal, as she had health problems, namely type 1 diabetes. On Sunday, September 15, 2019, two fishermen were engaged in their daily work near the aqueduct, the Neuquén province's breakwaters in Argentina. The Lime River was approached by them on the same day. They remained composed until they witnessed something that was beyond their understanding. When the water floated the remains of a young girl's body, specifically limbs and a skull. Frustrated, the fishermen contacted authorities who quickly arrived at the scene. Laura Lopez, a young girl from Plaudier, was quickly recalled by officers. Had been missing for less than 3 days. Her physical form was not familiar. The police were unsure of her identity and continued their search in the area to discover any indications of the victim's identity. In the same river, they came across a torn-up fabric bag, tights, and shoes. Undergarments. It was evident that the girl had been a victim of sexual assault, not just murder. The police contacted Laura's relatives after finding the clothing and inquired if they knew about it, would be able to spot it. The officers were unaware that the investigation would uncover the truth about the case. The method used to commit the crime was even more gruesome than what had been initially suspected. Plaudier, Argentina, was the birthplace of Laura Lopez on November 11, 2000. Her elder sisters, Melissa and Demaris, who were 18 years old when she was born, loved her from the first day. Laura's mother passed away when she was only 3 years old, and all 3 siblings were left as orphans, under the care of their father. Despite his initial efforts to provide for the family, the father eventually became addicted to alcoholism. A few years later, despite the challenges she faced, Laura was known for her sweet and loving nature. That's why her sister began referring to her as Cielo, a nickname that everyone who knew her would call her. She was referred to by her. The girl's father was laid off years later, necessitating them to find more work. At 18 years old, Cielo began vending fried pastries during the day. She went to high school in the evening, and during her free time from studying, she spent it doing something else. Ensure the well-being of her nieces and nephews. At the onset of her schooling, she had aspirations of finding a good job to restore her financial stability. A sense of stability has been bestowed upon her family. Unluckily, something took place that prevented this from happening. Cielo and Demaris spent the entire day on September 12, 2019, drinking tea with each other. Demaris finished renovating the house. Her sister joked that she had never made tea like her before. Either way, it's a good thing. It was a pleasant day. Cielo later attended school, where her peers observed something sporadic about the routine. She chose to sit at the back of the class instead of her usual spot and left after 20 minutes, the conclusion of the lesson. A friend greeted Cielo as he returned home at approximately 11:30 p.m. They spent some time conversing, drinking a few drinks, and taking selfies for social media. At 3 a.m. they said their goodbyes, and Cielo admitted to feeling tired but having a plan for the future, to go to sleep. A message was sent by Melissa to Lisa the next day, inquiring if she had sought medical attention for her ear issues. She was unresponsive, anxious. Melissa contacted Demaris to inquire about Cielo's presence, which led to concern. The sisters of Cielo. She was nowhere to be found, and her phone was switched off. They contacted the police as they found no evidence of her presence for several hours. They were informed at the police station that they had to wait for 48 hours from the last news item. Cielo was last seen by them before they filed a missing person report. The officers speculated that she might have had a boyfriend, as it was believed to be common. Adolescents encountering a situation. Saturday was characterized by the absence of life to Cielo. The report was only accepted by the police at that point, leading to a search. Sadly, it was already too late. The Lemay River's breakwater area was the location where two fishermen were working on Sunday the 15th. Plaudier is just 15 kilometers away from where Cielo calls home. They remained composed until they encountered something that caught their attention. A young girl's body, including limbs and a skull, was said to be found floating in the water. They promptly informed the authorities about this. Upon arrival, the officers observed that the brutality had been extinguished with great force. The body is the subject of discussion. It was apparent that the person in question had a thorough understanding of knives. The search for clues in the area was ongoing, with detectives still searching for any leads. The individual affected. A fabric bag, leggings, and underwear were discovered in the same river, but completely destroyed. They came across 2 rings while conducting their search. Finally, officers searched the riverbed and found a blood-stained knife. Cielo's family was soon referred to by them. Demarest spotted the attire upon her arrival at the location, and without hesitation, she took action. Without hesitation, she confirmed that it was her sister's property. The fishermen discovered Laura Lopez's limbs and skull in the shallow waters downstream from where they accidentally found her. The discovery of a young woman's body in Lemay River was made by firefighters around 11:30 on Monday. It had already been entrusted to the Forensic Expert Corps for examination. The autopsy was performed by Dr. Carlos Gordillo. He ascertained that the death was caused by a severe blow to the head, leading to internal bleeding, a throbbing of the brain. A blow to the back of her head caused her to become unconscious. Cielo endured 2 to 4 hours of agony. She could have survived if she had been treated properly. Furthermore, her arms were found to have bruises, indicating that she had been beaten and had some facial trauma, struggled her way towards the attacker. Cielo's sister's fears were validated by the forensic expert. The discovery of intimate wounds on her body was a clear indication of sexual assault. He also said that the recognizable marks of cuts on her neck, arms, and legs mentioned that the culprit had a history of approaching on kitchen knives. The assailant's lack of medical or anatomical knowledge was emphasized, which further intensified the problem. The roster of suspects. The detectives were unaware of the individual accountable for this terrible crime. After 3:00 a.m. on Friday, they analyzed Cielo's mobile phone and discovered that it was lost. Her contact had been with a man named Alfredo Emilio Escobar, a mechanic by profession. He was 28 years old. He and Cielo were both students in high school, and he had a passion for hunting and fishing, inspiringly enabling him to wield a knife. The distance between the girl's home and his house was 2.5 kilometers and/or 20 blocks, which made it convenient. The reception of signals from the antennas is potent. The girl was contacted by this person 4 times on September 13th at 3.16, 3.22, and 3:36 a.m. The man. At that point, the antennas established that they were both at home. Then both mobiles were activated in the vicinity of the girl's abode. The phone of Cielo headed towards the city center and arrived at Escobar's residence by 5 a.m. The girl's WhatsApp story featured an alien emoji, and her phone was still being tracked down. The man's dwelling was where I found him. At 5:52 a.m., the girl's mobile phone ceased to function. There was no communication from her thereafter. The records also indicated that Escobar had not re-entered his cell phone until 11:05 p.m. the following day. A day that. In China Muerta, where Cielo was hiding, the antenna of a nearby telephone pole detected the phone during this time. Subsequently, the remains were uncovered. Escobar came back home at 12:05 p.m. on September 15th. The video was captured by 13 cameras, which cover both city cameras and private residences. The stores were also examined. 2 individuals whose names were revealed were shown in specific recordings from the early morning of September 13th. The physical features were reminiscent of those of Cielo and Escobar. The young girl's mobile phone was in a state of mobility at the same time. Escobar was the only suspect in this case without a doubt. This man was recognized by one of the agents during the investigation. He reminisced about encountering him on Highway 22 a year ago, which was the way they were crossing to meet up with their families, the towns of New Caen and Plotier. A patrol car was hit by a young man who had been driving at velocities of over 80 kilometers per hour. The hour is a crucial one. He refused to be arrested, and a lawsuit was brought against him. Escobar was on the brink of going to court for that incident, but now the charges were completely different. The situation is distinct and has a greater gravity. At 8:30 a.m. on September 17th, a police patrol was present at the scene, which was roughly 30 meters away from Escobar's residence, had been working diligently. A young man who looked like the suspect was spotted driving away from a Fiat Ducato minibus that they had observed. Exited. He was immediately recognized by the police based on his physical attributes, including his face shape, facial features, and hairstyle. He entered the house and later emerged with two adults around 60 years old. The trio got into a vehicle, heading towards Highway 22, without any suspicion. Police chased the vehicle for a while and found it stopped in an area of nowhere. The zone is situated roughly 30 meters away from a bridge that connects New Cane and Cipolletti. The elderly man and Escobar exited the vehicle simultaneously. The police proceeded to ask for identification. Escobar was accompanied by his father and another man, while his mother was in the car. It was evident that they were attempting to escape the city. The young man did not hesitate to undergo the procedure, but was visibly anxious. Shortly after, Escobar was brought to the police station, and his vehicle was seized. Following that, he was subjected to a medical examination. The examination revealed swollen areas on the knuckles of his right hand's fingers, consistent with the use of a punching hand. He sustained cuts and bruises on the palm of his right hand. Cielo's death occurred on the same day as a few days before. These findings led to Escobar being charged with the rape and murder of the girl. Despite his request to remain silent, he was detained in custody for 6 months. There was a fear that he might escape or interfere with the investigation. On September 1st, the first search warrant was issued at the Estrada Street residence, the location where the Escobar family made their home. The property was sizable, incorporating a construction site and 2 buildings in the back. Upon entering the sleeping area where Escobar was present, officers discovered fingerprints on the walls. The use of luminol to check them resulted in the discovery of bloodstains. A cloth stained with blood was also found by officers during the search. The situation worsened as they walked to the building that was behind the residence. Crumpled vegetation was found to have blood spots. Blood was also present on the gates, the right handle of a cart, and on one end of an infrared emitting device. A device. It was in this place that the blow that caused Cielo's death occurred, as could be seen. The search team found bloodstains at the location and then examined samples for comparison. The blood of the girl and Escobar was present. The fluid found on Cielo's body was also examined through DNA analysis. The lawyer representing Escobar stated that rape charges should not be brought up until the outcome is determined. We were seized. Nonetheless, the outcomes were achieved in a short time frame. The Ministry of Health Central Laboratory scrutinized the samples collected during the outbreak. The victim and accused's genetic profiles are matched in the search. At the time of his arrest, Escobar was wearing sneakers and a knife was discovered at the river's bottom. They were also examined. Cielo was found to have DNA matching on both items. The victim's genital area was examined using 3 swabs. Escobar's DNA was compatible with one of them. As a result, investigators could already be certain that this individual had sexually assaulted the victim. The girl was killed, dismembered, and disposed of the corpse. The confirmation was made by law enforcement officials during a press conference on September 21st. Prosecutor Juan Agustin Garcia said he believed Escobar was guilty of the crime. He accused Cielo of murdering him to cover up his rape and stated that he could be prosecuted in the event of a guilty verdict, could be sentenced to life in prison. Similar to this, more evidence was still required. Technology played a significant role in Escobar's discovery, even though he did not plead guilty. The court ordered the seizure of his mobile phone, and he was required to furnish the access code. Scrutiny. Despite having Cielo as one of his contacts, it was discovered that he had removed her from the conversation on the night. The disappearance of her. The victim's call history was deleted by him, but their social security number was not removed. Dialogues with the media. The suspect's actions on September 11th, 12, and 13 were also revealed during the investigation. Visited the social media site to check out pictures shared by Cielo. Escobar maintained his innocence despite the evidence against him. Nevertheless, the evidence indicated that he was accountable for the murder. Ultimately, a conclusion was reached concerning the events that transpired on the night of the crime. On September 12, 2019, Cielo departed from school at approximately 8 p.m. After spending time with a friend, she stated that she was tired and would go to sleep. Sleeping is the purpose of this. She was contacted by Escobar at 3:40 in the morning, and they started a conversation. She and him were not friends, but she agreed to meet him, and they went back to his house. The events that occurred inside the house remained unanswered. Nonetheless, the research indicates that Cielo refrained from having personal encounters with Escobar. In a fit of rage, he sexually assaulted her. He took his own life out of fear that she might report him to the authorities. He escorted her to the backyard, hitting her on the head twice. Cielo was alive at that point, and Escobar acted cruelly by hiding her body for several hours. In order to avoid being caught unawares, he also shut down his phone. Cielo's body had been lying in the shed for almost a day, and she passed away due to the injuries. The body was dismembered with a sharp knife that Escobar had hidden in his kitchen. He loaded the body parts into his Fiat Ducato minibus and drove for 15 kilometers to reach his destination, the area where the breakwaters are located. He came back to the location and turned on his phone, feeling relieved and contemplating. The conclusion was reached. This case has become a public concern for the entire city. Neuquén has strongly denounced the accused. The statement made by Escobar's younger sister, who is 23 years old, was the most powerful. She posted a message on her social media profile that addressed both her brother and the victim. The publication was met with a range of responses. Some people sympathized with her situation, while others accused her of complicity. In the midst of these assaults, the girl requested that Cielo and her team remain attentive. Her family is a part of it. Melissa subsequently got in touch with Escobar's sister, expressed her gratitude for the message, and requested an explanation. It's time for people to cease attacking the girl since she has no history of harm. The criminal case was immediately pursued by the prosecution. The initial court proceedings were conducted in the Provincial Legislative Assembly. According to the Neuquén prosecutor, Escobar was fully responsible for his actions. The girl was allegedly killed through gender-based violence, in addition to other charges, the act of rape. In the same hearing, professionals who were involved in the examination of the attire discovered in that case. The river, in conjunction with the remains and evidence found in the man's house, provided their testimony. Testimonies. Florencia, Cielo's closest friend, was the most unexpected. She stated that Escobar had been sending messages to the victim for several months, inviting her to join him, to socialize and enjoy a drink. Despite this, they had never met before. She stated that she had been acquainted with him for 5 years and was aware that he didn't have it, a highly commendable standing. Parties at Escobar's house had been a regular occurrence over the years. The house was strewn with alcohol and psychoactive substances. Intimate liaisons were openly shared by couples. According to Florencia, she had advised her friend against dating Escobar on multiple occasions. The girl consistently replied with a refusal to respond and an inability to reply to his messages. The defense questioned why she had not suggested blocking Escobar's number. In response, Florencia stated that her friend had made the decision and she didn't want to dictate anything. Her life. They exhibited the girl's surveillance camera footage while she was on the stand, the day that Cielo went missing. They exhibited her a recording from ear at 4:00 a.m., which showed 2 individuals standing on opposite sides of the screen, individuals heading towards the central district of the city. Florencia reluctantly acknowledged that it was Cielo. She affirmed that her sneakers, jacket, and walking style were unmistakable. The girl also recognized Escobar. The testimony of Escobar's friend exposed his impulsiveness, as the judge accused him of infidelity. His behavior was marked by substance abuse and womanizing tendencies. His ex-partner was also present in court. According to her, their relationship ended in a negative way many years ago. She reported him to the authorities as she believed he had burglarized her home and stolen money. Money. When she reached out to him to ask for the money back, he ran after her friend who was with her. The defendant attempted to defend himself after examining the testimonies. Escobar pointed to his friend, who sold him illegal substances as the actual offender, the offense committed. That night, I was in a state of unconsciousness. My admission is that I've committed the act of removing blood and discarding it. He stated to the local media that he had not committed murder. According to him, he was intoxicated that evening, and this individual was also under the influence of drugs in his residence with Cielo. After hearing a scream from one of the rooms, Escobar immediately went to investigate had taken place. The blood was visible, and he proceeded to clean it up. He aided his friend in disguising the body. He expressed gratitude towards them for allowing him to share his supposed story at the end. The truth is what matters most. Despite the lack of evidence, this statement was not validated. Escobar was the lone suspect. The prosecutor stated in his closing argument that this man exploited the fact that they betrayed the victim's trust by being somewhat familiar with her. He orchestrated the cruelness of his behavior and the gruesome method of disposing of the remains. Alfredo Emilio Escobar received a unanimous verdict after the jury deliberated for only 40 minutes, convicted of raping and murdering Laura Cielo Lopez, aged 18. The charge that the latter one was brought up was made worse because it was aimed at hiding the attack. The issue of gender violence was a part of it. Due to these reasons, he was given a life sentence with no chance of release. The Cielo Lopez law, which was passed by the Neuquén provincial government, has been in effect since then. Strive to eradicate violence against women. All ages, including students and teachers, are required to receive training on gender violence. Fortunately, he was not forgotten, and a life sentence is reassuring. The victim cannot be brought back to life by involving society and the family, as per Marcelo Henriques, the family's lawyer in Velasco. The conclusion of this harrowing tale is:
40 years ago, an American teenager was found bludgeoned to death in a cemetery in New Jersey. Her face was so badly injured that it was impossible to identify her at the time. The American public began to refer to her as Princess Doe, the Jane Doe who had died too young. For 4 decades, her real name has been a mystery, until now. Hi, and welcome to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today's episode, I'm going to take you guys through the story of how Princess Doe was killed, how her identity was revealed, and how her killer was finally caught. Let's get right into it. Princess Doe was a previously unidentified American teenager from West Babylon, New York. She was found murdered in Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown, New Jersey, on the 15th of July, 1982. Her face had been bludgeoned beyond recognition. Her case gained national attention, and the public took a special interest in unraveling her story and finding answers. She became the first unidentified dead body to be entered into the National Crime Information Center. On the morning of Thursday, July 15, 1982, at around 8 a.m., gravedigger George Keyes discovered the body of a young girl in the rear section of the Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown, New Jersey. The body was found lying on its back, just over a steep bank that leads to a creek below. The victim's face had been beaten beyond recognition with a yet-to-be-determined object. Due to the significant decomposition of her body, even her eye color could not be confirmed. The young girl was dressed in a red short-sleeve shirt. A peasant-style skirt was found lying on top of the victim's legs. No footwear or undergarments were found. No conclusive evidence was found, but this was difficult to determine because of how much the body was decayed. A golden cross necklace was found tangled in the victim's hair. 2 earrings were found in her left ear. Red nail polish was found on the right hand only, and she had no surgical scars, distinct birthmarks, or tattoos. Scars or marks on the head or face area could not be known due to the condition of the body. Forensic anthropologists determined that the victim was not pregnant and had never given birth, and was most likely between the ages of 18 and 14 years old at the time of her death. Toxicology did not reveal any traces of drugs, but was not entirely conclusive because of the time elapsed between the death and the discovery of the body. It is believed that the body was discovered after 2 to 3 days, or possibly even weeks, of exposure to the elements. This was especially difficult to determine because of the hot and humid weather in the area at that time. The forensic examination indicated that the girl had attempted to fight back or defend herself from her attacker, as injuries indicating trauma to her hands and arms were visible. The girl's body was buried in the Cedar Ridge Cemetery, not far from where she was discovered in January 1983. Donated funds were used to pay for the victim's coffin and headstone. The headstone was engraved with the text, "Princess Doe, missing from home, dead among strangers, remembered by all." For many years, Princess Doe was thought to be Diane Janice Guy, a missing teenager from San Jose, California, who vanished on July 30, 1979. This theory was propagated by several law enforcement officials in the state of New Jersey, who went as far as to hold a press conference identifying Diane Dye as Princess Doe. However, Lieutenant Eric Kranz, the Princess Doe case's original lead investigator, maintained that Diane Dye was not a viable candidate for Princess Doe's identity. Kranz's feelings were shared by Diane's family and investigators in California, who were particularly angered by the conduct of the New Jersey law enforcement. In 2003, Princess Doe's DNA was compared with a DNA sample from Diane's mother, Patricia, and it was conclusively determined that Princess Doe was not Diane Dye. After seeing images of the girl's clothing in the newspaper, a witness named Anne-Marie Latimer reported to officials that she remembered seeing a girl wearing the same clothing as Princess Doe purchasing cigarettes on July 13, 1982, just 2 days before her body was found. Latimer stated that she was shopping with her daughter at a supermarket across from the cemetery and observed and was able to describe the victim's clothing. The shirt and skirt themselves were traced to a manufacturer in the Midwestern United States, although the brand labels were missing. 3 people reported, after viewing the photos, that they had bought similar clothes at a Long Island store, which is now closed. On September 22, 1999, the body of Princess Doe was exhumed from the Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown so that DNA samples could be taken. The body was reburied in the same location. After a 2012 photo composite of the victim was released, it generated new tips, as it resembled several missing girls from across the country. One theory was submitted that Princess Doe may have been a runaway and could have been an individual using false names while employed at a hotel in Ocean City, Maryland. In 2012, a sample of her hair and a tooth were examined through isotope analysis and indicated that the victim was most likely born in the United States. At least 7 to 10 months in the Midwestern or Northeastern United States. The tooth sample indicated she could be from Arizona. It is also believed that the girl had spent a long time in Long Island, New York. Lieutenant Kranz, now retired, coined the name Princess Doe early in the investigations and also managed to get the case covered extensively in the media. The case was used as the impetus for recording unidentified crime victims in the MCIC database at the national level. Princess Doe became the first such case entered by the FBI director. After extensive print media coverage in 1982, Lieutenant Kranz, who was the original lead investigator from the Blairstown Police Department, was contacted by HBO regarding the Princess Doe case and asked if the channel could chronicle the case in an upcoming documentary entitled Missing. Kranz agreed, and the segment was filmed over several weeks. Kranz was shown following leads as they came in. The documentary featured actual footage of the recovery of Princess Doe's body, along with footage shot by HBO of Princess Doe's 1983 funeral. The case was also featured on America's Most Wanted in 2012 in hopes of generating new information about the case. The same year, the most recent reconstruction was broadcast on CNN. On July 15, 2012, a memorial service was held for the 30th anniversary of Princess Doe being discovered at the top of the ravine where her remains were found. Over 100 citizens attended, as well as several reporters and cameras. The victim's clothing, as well as her photo reconstructions, were on display for public viewing. On October 12, 2014, Princess Doe was honored at a missing persons rally in the area. In the years between the first discovery in the body and the final identification, several theories cropped up. The first one was that Princess Doe was actually Diane Dye, a young girl missing from California, which has now been definitively disproved. Secondly, the killer of Princess Doe was already imprisoned for another homicide. A man called John Reese was briefly suspected, as he was convicted of killing another woman in nearby Belvedere, New Jersey. But there was no real evidence of a connection with Princess Doe. The third theory was that Princess Doe was either a runaway that was known to work in the Ocean City, Maryland area, or a prostitute who worked at the local truck stop. The information for these two possibilities was highly inconclusive. Nobody from the local area came forward to identify Princess Doe on or off the record. It seems unlikely that not one single person would come forward if she was known in the area. The fourth and disturbing theory was that Princess Doe was killed by a Blairstown police officer, and that is why the case was never solved. But this claim is completely unsubstantiated. There are retired local law enforcement officers who still follow and contribute to the case, even after 40 years. The fifth theory was that Princess Doe was a victim of a serial killer known to operate in the area, such as John Kleiss, Henry Lee Lucas, or Joel Rifkin. Though local law enforcement was aware of these claims, none were found to be credible. A sixth theory was that Princess Doe was an out-of-state teenager who worked at an area camp. Again, this was never proven. And now we come to the seventh theory, that Princess Doe was killed by a man named Arthur Kinlaw. For many years, this was the most current theory. Many of the facts fit the case, and this theory was explored on the America's Most Wanted website. Several New York Newsday articles reference this theory that was published in 1999 and 2000. Mr. Kinlaw was already imprisoned for other crimes, but since Princess Doe's body wasn't identified, his involvement in her murder could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Princess Doe's body was re-exhumed in November 2020 using a grant, and she underwent DNA extraction for genetic genealogy. In May 2021, investigators were notified by the NCMEC, or National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who were collaborating with Astria Forensics about obtaining DNA markers from degraded samples of Princess Doe's body using a grant. On June 18, 2021, investigators received the news that Astria Forensic agreed to extract DNA and construct a DNA profile. On February 10, 2022, Astria Forensics relayed to investigators that the creation of a DNA data file was successful. The results were sent to the NCMEC's consulting genealogist from Innovative Forensics Investigations. The managing officer was Jennifer Moore, who agreed to perform unlimited genealogy testing free of charge. On February 22, 2022, Innovative Forensics announced to investigators that they had found a candidate for Princess Doe. Investigators went to West Babylon, New York, where they met Robert Olenek Jr., Princess Doe's brother. They also collected a DNA sample from Princess Doe's sister, which mitotyping technology used to build a mitochondrial DNA profile. The Union County Prosecutor's Office Forensic Laboratory assisted by creating an STR DNA profile through the victim's sister's DNA sample. Mitotyping technology sent their results to the Union County Prosecutor's Office Forensic Laboratory, then sent both the mitochondrial DNA and STR DNA profiles through the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification. On April 29, 2022, the center identified Princess Doe as Dawn Olenek. Her identity was formally announced on July 15, 2022, the 40th anniversary of her discovery. Robert Olenek Jr. said that Olenek left their home at her mother's request, and she was never seen or heard from again. Way back in 1999, evidence came to light that Arthur and Donna Kinlaw may have been involved in Princess Doe's murder. Donna was arrested in California for attempting to commit welfare fraud by using the name Eliana, which was traced to a Long Island native. When the police questioned her, she gave them details about the murder of Linda, and her testimony put the Kinlaws behind bars. Donna gave details about 2 murders Arthur had committed, of 2 other female victims, who remain unidentified today. After Arthur was faced with a death sentence, Donna told authorities that Kinlaw had killed another woman, a sex worker, earlier in 1982. She told police that she was with Arthur in the cemetery and witnessed him commit the murder. Another report states that Donna Kinlaw said that in July 1982, her husband brought home a teenage girl, left home, and returned without her. He later apparently disposed of his clothing and cleaned his vehicle. Afterward, he threatened his wife, claiming if she did not attend her job, he would take her life, as he did to the girl he brought home. However, a lack of corroboration meant that Arthur Kinlaw was not charged. Lieutenant Stephen Spears, who worked on the case as a member of the Warren County Prosecutor's Office, from which he is now retired, stated that Kinlaw claimed responsibility for her death, but I have no physical evidence to confirm that. And without the identity of Princess Doe, I have no way of connecting the dots, so to speak, putting her in a place where he could have been or would have been at the same time. Spears also reported that he doubted the confession because the Kinlaws could not provide a name for Princess Doe, even though they claimed to have been with her for some time. Even though he questioned the credibility of their statements, Spears does not believe the victim was native to Long Island, New York. However, Donna Kinlaw was interviewed by a forensic artist who created a sketch of the girl she claimed to have met, which does resemble the most recent composite. Arthur Kinlaw remained incarcerated for 2 counts of second-degree murder. Following the 2022 investigation of Princess Doe as Don Olenek, Arthur Kinlaw was reconsidered as a suspect and later charged with Olenek's murder. Don Olenek was born on August 5, 1964. She had been a junior at Connequot High School in Bohemia, New York, where she had lived with her mother and sister, authorities said. But she soon moved out of the family home. According to her brother, she was thrown out of her home by her mom. She ended up getting killed in a cemetery, leaving no clue as to her real identity. But for more than 20 years, the name of her suspected killer was no secret. In 1999, the wife of Arthur Kinlaw, the convicted pimp who today is serving time for the murder of many other Long Island women, tied her husband not only to those deaths, but to the brutal slaying of the girl in the Blairstown Cemetery. In an interview with Newsday at the time, Donna Kinlaw recounted how her husband, in the summer of 1982, brought a girl of about 18 years old back to their Central Islip home. She told the newspaper as well as police that her husband left with the woman, but later returned home alone, appearing shaken. About 2 weeks later, according to Newsday, she read that police in Belvedere, New Jersey, had found the body of a dead girl who fit the description of the girl who was in their house that night. He kept saying, "What does it say? What does it say? Does it say who the person was who got killed?" She said her husband asked. From the story she read aloud to her husband, Donna Kinlaw told Newsday that she remembered that the New Jersey police named the dead girl Princess Jane Doe. Not long afterward, investigators exhumed her body to recover the murder victim's femur bone in hopes of using her DNA to identify her. And in fact, investigators acknowledged that Arthur Kinlaw confessed to the New Jersey murder in written statements dating back to 2005. But it was not until April of this year that Don Olenek was positively identified. Arthur Kinlaw, now 68, is currently imprisoned in Sullivan County, New York, on 2 other first-degree murder convictions from 2000. Among them was a teenager he knew only as Linda in April 1984 in the Bronx, Newsday reported. "I strangled her with my hands," said Kinlaw. "She was hit about the head, by me, with a bat." Arthur Kinlaw has now been charged with 1 count of homicide as the result of the subsequent investigation, witness statements, and his confession of Olenek's murder. It is believed that after Don Olenek refused his demands to go into prostitution, he drove her to New Jersey. They both ended up in Blairstown, where Kinlaw murdered her in the Cedar Ridge Cemetery. Neither Olenek nor Kinlaw had a connection with the town. Kinlaw remains imprisoned at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York. Investigators are now looking to piece together Don Olenek's movements in the time leading up to her death. The DNA Doe Project, also DNA Doe Project Incorporated, or DDP, is an American nonprofit volunteer organization formed to identify unidentified deceased persons, or commonly known as John or Jane Doe, by using forensic genealogy. Their volunteers identified victims of automobile accidents, homicides, and unusual circumstances, such as persons who committed suicide under an alias. The group was founded in 2017 by Colleen Fitzpatrick and Margaret Press. Unraveling the mystery of Princess Doe has been a sensational success for genealogical DNA testing of exactly this kind. Sometimes the smallest things make the biggest impact, and for the case of Princess Doe, that was exactly what happened. A molar root weighing just 200 kilograms would hold the answers that had eluded investigators for close to 40 years. With the help of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Princess Doe's molar and eyelash were submitted to Astria Forensics in 2021 for possible DNA extraction. What is so special about Astria is that they can extract DNA from samples that are degraded or otherwise would provide no value, said Carol Schweitzer, a forensic supervisor at NCMEC. "We knew that if anyone could get the information that was needed, Astria could. And they did." Kelly Kincaid, CEO of Astria Forensics, told NCMEC that they were lucky to find that the DNA was exceptionally well preserved and allowed for millions of pieces of information to be gathered to complete the DNA profile. This single DNA extract contained hundreds of millions of unique human DNA fragments, said Kelly. With these sequencing data, we were able to reconstruct her whole genome single nucleotide polymorphisms or SMP profile. This resulted in Astria being able to deliver genotype files to NCMEC and the Warren County Prosecutor's Office that could go on and be used to complete Princess Doe's genealogy. This technology, that would not have been possible 40 years ago, was just the break the investigators had been hoping for to identify Princess Doe's identity. Once Astria finished the sequencing, Innovative Forensic Investigations, or IFI, started to work on investigative genetic genealogy techniques to build a family tree that would ultimately lead to the true identity of Princess Doe, or who we now know as Dawn Olenek. This work was only possible because of the collaborative effort of each agency, said Jennifer Moore, CEO of IFI. Our team brings forward a diverse set of skills that allows us to help find answers to cases. Echoing Moore's sentiment in today's press conference, Prosecutor Pfeiffer reiterated that science and technology made the impossible possible in this case. Dawn's case was deeply personal for the investigators involved, and their push for answers and justice never wavered. Dawn's family expressed deep gratitude to everyone who worked to find answers in Dawn's case. "This is a very big deal for my family," said Dawn's cousin. "I'd like to thank Blairstown for treating my cousin like she was one of their own. It touches our family deeply. My cousin is always in my heart," he said while tapping the photo of Dawn pinned to his chest. "Blairstown gave it their all and never gave up. We were greatly appreciative of that." Since Princess Doe was the first unidentified persons case to be entered into NCIC, the National Crime Information Center, by the director of the FBI, William Webster, on June 30, 1983, this was a historic moment for missing and unidentified persons that has continued to play a crucial role in investigations since. The entry in NCIC has remained current and alive until today, when she will be removed. The tenacity of law enforcement has never stopped, and they continue to pour resources and new technology into solving this case. And it's thanks to the collaboration between police authorities and genealogical DNA testing experts that Princess Doe was publicly identified on the 40th anniversary of the discovery of her body as Dawn Olenek. So, what do you guys think about this 40-year-old case finally getting resolved? Do you still have any theories about Princess Doe? Desmond was born March 18, 1980, at Torrance Memorial Hospital, and right from the start, she was the center of attention because she had to fight to survive. Due to a hole in her diaphragm, she had to undergo multiple surgeries. She was only given a 20% chance of survival, and miraculously, she not only survived, but she thrived. Friends and family of Desmond knew her as a smart, self-confident young woman, unafraid to express her opinion, who was energetic and full of affection for those she cared about, who were many. Desmond graduated from North Torrance High School and earned a master's degree in criminal justice from Long Beach State. Unsure of her calling in life, she changed her mind and decided to become a teacher. Her goal was to teach autistic children. A week after her death, a notice came in the mail that she had earned her teaching credential. She was loved by many and friends to all. She was sweet at times, but could be tough as nails. She could command a bar full of patrons when she wanted, and all the while be singing one of her favorite karaoke songs such as Black Velvet or These Boots Were Made for Walking, and once again, being the center of attention. It was that secondary family that Corey acquired while working in those various establishments that kept her going back despite what her family wanted her to do. In 2009, Corey worked in a bar. On Saturday, February 14th, she had a shift that ended at 9:30 p.m. She then walked 2 blocks to the popular Bar Street Lounge. Many employees of this bar knew Corey, as she had friends working there. She was caught on surveillance cameras helping her friends at the bar. She left there only after closing, around 2 a.m. None of her friends saw her after that. On Monday, February 16th, at approximately 2:20 p.m., the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office received a terrifying call. About 100 miles from the bar where people last saw Corey, the driver stopped to take snow chains off the wheels. The man felt a strong, unpleasant smell as soon as he exited the car. He thought the source of the stench was an animal that got hit by a car, but still decided to check. Not far from the car, he found something strange. He saw a black plastic garbage bag with a woman's body inside. The man ran out into the road in a panic, stopping cars and asking to call the police as his phone's battery was dead. They identified the victim by fingerprints and driver's license. It was 28-year-old Corey "Daddy" Desmond. Subjected to a brutal attack, the woman died from strangulation. She had a lot of bruises on her face and neck and injuries to the back of her head. Corey tried to fight back, as she had several defense wounds. Although unable to determine the exact time of death, the medical experts said Corey was on the street for about 36 hours before the man found her. Corey's pants were unbuttoned and pulled to her knees, but no signs of intimate contact were found. The first conclusion that investigators came to was that the place where the driver found Corey's body was not the place of her death. The criminal left her body by the side of the road, hoping it would take time to find it. Before the man found her body, the rain destroyed all possible evidence. Reporting bad news to the families of the dead or missing is perhaps the hardest thing in the work of a policeman. At that time, Corey was living with her grandmother. The news about the granddaughter's body found in a garbage bag shocked the woman. And this news was no less devastating for Mark, Corey's father. Mark knew perfectly well how the system worked. Sometimes the police delay the investigation for many months because they need a warrant to conduct searches, interrogations, and fingerprinting. There are cases when the time-consuming bureaucracy slows down the process of solving a crime. Therefore, Mark decided not to sit and wait for the police to find the person who deprived him of his daughter. He decided to act. He said love for his daughter gave him the strength to look for the criminal. Mark found Corey's Jeep Wrangler in an alley next to the bar where she worked. He also discovered that Corey disappeared on the night of February 15th, but unfortunately, no one knew about it. Grandma did not panic because Corey was already an adult and could stay overnight with a friend or friends. In addition, she often worked late into the night and came home when her grandmother was already asleep. Investigators went to the bar where Desmond worked to find possible witnesses or leads. They talked to other employees and learned that Corey finished her shift at 9:30 p.m. and then went to another bar. She often did that. Her friends worked at that bar, and Corey often visited them at the end of her shift. She helped at the bar or chatted with friends while sitting at the counter. Besides, it brought her extra tips. Bar visitors knew her face well, and many perceived Corey as another employee. Surveillance cameras confirmed the words of the visitors. They captured the girl helping her friends at the bar. Unfortunately, a bartender's job is not only to pour drinks and entertain the interlocutors. Sometimes, after drinking alcohol, some people stop controlling their emotions and their behavior becomes inappropriate. That evening, Corey was unlucky enough to meet such a person. According to eyewitnesses, she argued with some man who behaved provocatively. He bothered women and unceremoniously touched them, making unflattering compliments. While everyone was silent and did not dare to put this man in his place, Corey stood up for the bar's visitors. In other words, the girl explained to the man that he was not welcome there. The violent guest was furious, but still agreed to leave. Corey continued to help her friends and made drinks at the bar as if nothing had happened. That evening, she consumed alcohol, but it did not affect her behavior. After 2 a.m., she left the bar alone and planned to go home. But as we now know, a man found Corey's lifeless body 100 miles from the bar the next day. Mark gave the police all the information he could find. Through television, he appealed to everyone to report any crucial information for the investigation. Meanwhile, the police identified the man Corey quarreled with before her death. During a conversation with investigators, the man said he did not know who Corey Desmond was. However, he did not deny having a big fight with the girl in a bar on February 14th. The man said alcohol made him uncontrollable, confirming that they kicked him out of the bar. Right after that, he went home to sleep. The suspect denied any involvement in the crime. He agreed to take a polygraph test and let the police search his house and car. They carefully examined the suspect's car. After all, there could have been traces like bloodstains, hair, or something belonging to Corey. The car was dirty both inside and outside. and yet forensic experts did not find any evidence there. While searching the man's house, they found nothing indicating his involvement in the crime. The last hope of the investigators to catch the man in a lie was a polygraph test, but the man passed it without much difficulty, answering all the questions of the police. In addition, his wife confirmed that he came home before 2 a.m. and immediately went to bed. Corey left the bar around 2 a.m., which means this man was not involved in her death. Thus, the police excluded him from the list of suspects, but the problem was that they had no other persons of interest in this investigation. They studied Corey's personal life, trying to find out if she had enemies who could wish her harm. Investigators found out another strange detail. The owner of the bar where Corey worked said that that night, she came and asked for permission to use the toilet. But since the bar was closed, he refused the girl's request and advised her to go home. It was about 2:20 in the morning. What happened next remained a mystery because Corey never got in the car and did not go home. Investigators assumed that she had been abducted or assaulted near her place of work. However, the bar's surveillance cameras did not record this, and there were no witnesses on the street at such a late hour. At the time of Corey's death, her blood alcohol content was more than 4 times the legal limit for driving. It was unclear whether she planned to use her car or was looking for other ways to get home. Unfortunately, she did not meet anyone who would help her that night. A month later, the investigation reached a dead end. The police checked all the versions and clues but found no new suspects. Corey's father, Mark, wasn't going to give up. He rented 3 billboards on Artesia Boulevard in Redondo Beach. The billboards contained a photo of his daughter with the question, "Who killed Corey Day Desmond?" The man offered a $15,000 reward for any information helpful to the police. "I'm going to keep them up there to let people know the guy is still out there," Mark Desmond said. "Maybe it will save somebody." To some extent, this story is similar to the one of Alexandra Kemp. The latter's father, Roger, did everything to find the criminal, and billboards played a crucial role in solving the crime. If you haven't watched this story yet, click on the link at the end of this video. Information about Corey periodically appeared on 50 electronic billboards. Eventually, it brought results. In May 2009, the phone rang at the police station. A woman named Tiffany Ware saw one of the billboards with a photo of Corey. Thanks to this woman, the police were able to solve this case. Tiffany spoke very quietly. The woman was experiencing stress and severe fright. She rambled as if she didn't know where to start. Then she finally focused and said, "Hello, my name is Tiffany. I think my boyfriend Tony Lopez Perez killed that bartender girl, Corey Day Desmond. Please check him. He's behaving strangely, but I'll tell you more when we meet." Tiffany called several times to arrange a meeting with the detective. During their conversation in the park, the woman told him about her suspicions. According to her, on February 14th, she and Tony planned a romantic Valentine's Day dinner. She spent the whole evening preparing for a date. Tiffany took the children to their grandparents, visited a beauty salon, and bought a new red dress. Tony loved it when she wore red clothes. It drove him crazy. The guy was working that day, but had to return home around 11:30 p.m. Tiffany waited for Tony almost all night. The woman tried to contact him, but he did not answer calls and messages. Tony returned home at 4:30 in the morning and, as if nothing had happened, said he was too drunk to go home. He said he fell asleep in his car. Tiffany mentioned that Tony rarely cleaned the interior of his car. However, after a few days, he bought a whole set of cleaning products. He washed the car thoroughly, not letting her help. The guy's behavior seemed strange, but at that moment, she did not attach much importance to it. A few days later, Tony sold his white Dodge for almost nothing and bought another car. He also changed his phone number for no apparent reason. A little later, they had a joint trip to Big Bear Lake. They chatted along the way, and everything seemed normal, until Tony suddenly stopped the car on the side of the road. He turned to Tiffany and asked her, "Do you think this dead girl, what was her name, the bartender, was dumped here? I'm almost 100% sure that the police found her body here." Tony Lopez Perez and Tiffany Ware lived together for about 4 years.
They had a 6-year-old son together, but they never married. He was a hard-working man and got along well with everyone. He has never had any problems with the law. Perez came from a large family with 8 siblings. His parents grew up in the LA area, and Perez attended high school in Manhattan Beach. Tony's absence on the day of Corey's death, cleaning the car and urgently selling it, a strange trip, and an equally strange comment about where the police found her body, a change of phone number, and odd behavior. Putting all these facts together, Tiffany realized that Tony could be the one who took the life of Corey Desmond. She didn't want to believe it. The investigators decided to talk to Tony and went to his house. To prevent him from suspecting anything, Tiffany agreed to play along with the police, not telling him anything about this conversation. It looked as if they were conducting a routine interview of people to find witnesses in the Corey Desmond case. Tony looked calm, like a person with nothing to hide. He wasn't nervous while answering all the questions. He said he didn't know her, mentioning he had only seen Corey in the newspapers. However, to arrest Tony Lopez Perez for taking the life of Corey, they needed hard evidence. Thus, the police found the new owner of the Dodge that Tony sold shortly after the news of Corey's death. The new owner confirmed that Tony sold him his car for a low price. He allowed the police to check the vehicle for any evidence. Tiffany said Tony cleaned the interior thoroughly before selling his car. However, when the experts applied luminol and used an ultraviolet lamp, it became evident why Tony Lopez Perez got rid of his car. The interior of the car lit up in bright blue. The police asked Tony to come to the police station. They didn't tell him anything about the find, so he wouldn't run away. At first, he claimed he had never seen Corey, but later changed his testimony, saying he saw her near the bar and whistled at her. As soon as the police noticed that the man was changing his testimony, they showed him photos of the car he had sold and said that they had found crucial evidence there. This time, Tony claimed to have seen Corey outside the bar. Standing under a street lamp, she suddenly lost consciousness and fell on the sidewalk. He tried to help her, but she did not regain consciousness. Then he started slapping Corey on the cheeks. Corey opened her eyes and started screaming. She told him to get out and asked him to let her go. According to Tony, he got scared, put his hands over her mouth, and accidentally strangled her. Fearing he would get blamed for Corey's death, he put her body in the back seat of his car and drove home. Perez said he woke up during the night and went outside to see if it was a nightmare. "I opened the door and it was not a nightmare," Perez told detectives. "It was true." Perez said he went back inside and tried to get some sleep. In the morning, he went to work with Desmond's body still in the back seat. At the end of the working day, he placed her body in 2 garbage bags, took it to a remote area, and left it next to the side of the road. According to Tony's story, what he did to Corey was an accident. He claimed that he was drunk and scared. He accidentally strangled her in a state of panic, but Corey's injuries suggested otherwise. She had severe injuries on the back of her head, bruises on her face and neck, and defense wounds on her hands. Moreover, Corey's pants were down to her knees. Tony Perez was arrested and charged with first-degree deprivation of life. The next day, he showed the police where he dumped Corey's body. In addition to Tony's confession, they now had the results of DNA tests. Corey's blood matched the blood found in the car that Tony sold immediately after committing the crime. At the 2011 trial, Coroner Jack Sheridan testified to the multiple contusions to the victim's head, the evidence of strangulation, and the blunt force trauma to her face. Sheridan also said she had scratches on her body that suggested the criminal dragged her after her death. Based on Corey's injuries, prosecutors said Perez assaulted her and tried to force her into intimacy in the early morning of February 15, 2009. Corey resisted. Unable to get what he wanted, Perez strangled her. Tiffany Ware testified during the trial. She told the San Bernardino County jury that her former boyfriend, Tony Lopez Perez, had an insatiable appetite for sex in January and February 2009. Even though they were making love almost every day, Ware said Perez was still not satisfied. Tiffany also told the court that Tony had twice engaged in intimacy with her against her will. It happened after the birth of their son and with an interval of about a month.
Both incidents occurred when she was fast asleep on the couch after taking painkillers due to severe back pain. Perez, who chose not to testify at the trial, made his first statements to the court during his sentencing. He said he was taught to love and respect those around him, but that he veered off course at times. "I forgot the key lessons I was taught about in life, which make me a man, a father, a loving uncle to many, and a responsible person who supports his family that I so love," Perez said. "In the end, I fell short." He generally stuck to the story his attorney Andrew Hanel presented at the trial, that he was scared and didn't mean to hurt Desmond. Hanel argued to a jury of 6 men and 6 women that Perez found her passed out on the sidewalk. He said he tried to calm her down and didn't mean to kill her. "I should have thought before acting," Perez said. "I should have stepped back and cleared my head. Fear took over. I was so scared, so careless." Corey's father, Mark Desmond, said his daughter had a beautiful future ahead of her before her life was cut short at the age of 28. Tony Perez should live the rest of his miserable life knowing he killed his own children's hopes and dreams at the same time he was killing Corey, her father said. He embodies all the characteristics that women in society fear. Just before sentencing, Perez asked God and the court to show him mercy. "My very deepest apologies to the Desmond family and to my own family. I have brought such hurt and sorrow to the Desmonds that will forever shape their life. I hope he never gets out in the street again," said Desmond's grandmother Beverly. "I hope he suffers as much as she suffered." In July 2011, a jury of 6 men and 6 women found 36-year-old Tony Lopez Perez guilty of first-degree deprivation of life. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the right to parole after 25 years. Corey Desmond's family expressed gratitude to Tiffany Ware, thanks to whom the police solved this case. "If it hadn't been for her, I don't think they would have ever found out it was him," said Leslie Schwab, a family friend who attended every day of the trial, along with about a dozen others in San Bernardino County.